Hello, fourth grade. Sorry it's been so long. For those of you who are listening, I have a few minutes while I'm waiting on my daughter to have her piano lesson, so I'm going to read. We're going to start on chapter 25. We ended off with her dad was going to go look at a building, and Avon found out that her dad had a bunch of keys. And she said, well, it just so happens I'm looking for a key. So chapter 25. It was a rare, icy cold winter day as Connor, Zion, and I sat outside the office on the sidewalk eating our lunches. "Fruit snack, please," I said, and Connor shoved one in my mouth. Mom had insisted I wear my old, warm boots today, and though I was glad my toes weren't freezing, it was highly inconvenient. I looked at my friends, both shivering as they took their bites of their lunches. "This is ridiculous," I said. "We should be eating in the cafeteria today." They looked up at me in alarm. I had to admit, I didn't feel ready to head there myself, despite the freezing wind. "We can stay here." They both let out sighs of relief. "So, Dad told me he's going to try to get the keys in the office as organized as possible, and then he'll let us try out the ones he can't figure out. I bet one of them goes to the desk." "I wonder what's going to be in there," said Zion. I chewed on a fruit snack and gulped. "Maybe a murder weapon." Zion shivered. "I hope not." "I hope so," I declared. "Then we can turn it into the police, and then they'll get the fingerprints off it, and then they'll bust the murderer, and then we'll be all in the newspaper. And the murderer will be like, 'I could have gotten away with it too, if it hadn't been for you nosy kids.'" Zion and Connor both frowned at me. "I don't want to be in the newspaper," said Zion. "Me neither," said Connor. "And I think you've watched too much Scooby-Doo." I scowled. Sometimes those guys were a total buzzkill. And I had watched too much Scooby-Doo. I decided to change the subject. "So, we've had hundreds of artists call about the festival. So many that we've had to turn some away that don't fit with the Stagecoach Pass theme. Seriously, like, who wants to buy something called a diaper cake?" No thank you. I'll stick with chocolate." Zion nodded. "Yeah, that's gross." "Disgusting," Connor agreed. "We need to find a band now," I said. "Any ideas?" "Shouldn't be too hard to find one," Connor said. "Just look online." Then he raised an eyebrow at me. "Maybe you should perform, Avon." I looked at him in disbelief. "Is that supposed to be a joke?" My earmuffs slipped down a little, and Connor pushed them back up on my head. "No," he said. "I think it would be cool." Zion looked at me. "What do you play, Avon?" "The guitar," Connor answered for me. "But she won't play for anyone. I think she might be lying about being able to play." I shoved Connor with my foot. "Shut up!" He laughed. "Then play a song at the festival. It would be so cool." "What do you care?" I said. "You're not even coming." Zion jerked his head to Connor. "You're not going?" Connor shrugged. "I don't know. Avon thinks there's going to be like thousands of people there." Zion stared at him. "So?" Connor gaped at Zion. So that's thousands of people to stand around staring and laughing at me." "They'll be staring at me too," I said. "But I'm still going." "Fine," said Connor. "I'll tell you what. If you play your guitar, I'll come and watch you." My throat suddenly felt dry. "Juice box, please," I whispered, and Connor obliged. I took a swig and cleared my throat. "I'm not performing at the festival. I would never perform in public for anything." "Then I'm not coming," Connor said stubbornly. Darn it. He knew I wouldn't perform, and that was his way out. "Why won't you play for anyone, Avon?" Zion said. I shrugged. I didn't want people watching me up there. Watching the freak is what I wanted to say. "Why not?" Zion asked. "You acted in a play on stage in front of people." "That was different. I was in a silly cactus costume. If you don't know me, you wouldn't have even known I didn't have arms. Doing stuff with my feet in front of a crowd, performing with my feet, that's just different. I'd feel like I was in a circus or something. That's silly, said Zion. No one would think of you like that. But I knew he was wrong. 26. In most places, spring comes around March or April or even May. Arizona's whole winter is pretty much like springtime, with a few winter days scattered throughout. I can't say I was sorry not to have to trudge through snow everywhere I went. Things were finally coming together for the festival. Dad found a website that had like 100 country western bands for hire listed on it. We had our pick, and they weren't even very expensive. Mom and I spent an entire day cleaning up the old stage in the closed-down rodeo arena. That was also where the food trucks would park, since we weren't having a rodeo. Connor and I had gone to 2 more support group meetings, and I got the feeling he was actually starting to enjoy them, even though he often gave Dexter the stink eye. I still hadn't found a tarantula, despite going out almost every night with Dad. One day, I was visiting Spaghetti, and I asked Denise what she knew about tarantulas. Do they bother the animals? Well, there aren't any tarantulas around here, she told me as she raked the dirt ground. There aren't, but I thought they were all over the deserts. I've read all about them, and every book I've read distinctly states that they live in the Sorona Desert. They should be here, but I guess with the city moving in on us like this, they've gone away. I rubbed at Spaghetti's sides with my feet. Yeah, but there's still a good chunk of desert right behind us. I'm always looking for one when I walk out there, but I've never seen one. Denise stopped raking and wiped her brow. I guess there used to be a bunch around here, but they disappeared a while back. Henry says it was around 2004. I stared at her. They disappeared in 2004? But Henry can't remember anything. Nothing recent, Denise agreed, but sometimes he can remember things from the past. In 2004, I repeated to myself. Yeah, he said the last time anyone saw a live tarantula around here was in 2004. Denise went back to raking the ground. Who knows? Maybe just made it up. I decided to go visit Henry. He was sitting in front of the soda shop in one of the rocking chairs. I stood in front of him and asked, When did the tarantulas disappear? In 2024, he said quickly and matter-of-factly. Why do you think that? Because, he said, and for the first time ever, his eyes looked clear and knowing to me. They left with her. I shivered, and not from the cool breeze. With who? He looked up at me, his eyes once more clouding with confusion. Who what? Who did the tarantulas leave with? He continued giving me his confused look. You want an ice cream, sweetheart? I sighed. No, thank you. I even visited Madame Myrtle to try to figure things out, but she was clueless about the tarantulas. She said maybe an exterminator came and took care of them in 2014. Ridiculous. Connor, Zion, and I spent as much time in the storage building as we could, looking through old pictures and junk. So far, Dad had given us about 15 unlabeled keys to try out on the desk, but none of them had worked. This one's a dud, Connor called, pulling a key out of the drawer and tossing it back into a paper bag. I frowned as I kicked a box in one corner of the shed. It was so old and brittle from the heat that it burst wide open, sending a wave of papers onto the floor. It wasn't necessarily the most orderly way of doing things, but it was a lot easier than Zion's methods. I sheepishly glanced over at him as he carefully removed old tape from a box and put the top back like the Mona Lisa might be inside. Zion shook his head at me. Haven, he scolded, did you have to make this place look like a tornado ripped through here? She's from Kansas, Connor said as he tried another key. Tornadoes are in her blood. Connor grunted and then barked. Dud. He pulled out the key. I sifted through the papers on the ground with my toes, trying to make out the faded writing. There were a lot of numbers and words like deduction and revenue and net. I had no idea what any of it meant, but I decided it was all far too boring to be important. Whoa, Zion said, causing Connor and me to stop what we were doing and look at him. He had a book in his hands and was pulling something out from between the pages. Whoa, he said again in a whisper. Connor and I walked through the junk to see what Zion was whoaing about. He held up an old black and white photograph for us to see. A photograph of me, with arms, wearing the turquoise necklace, taken in 1973. All right, guys, that's where we're going to pause on a little bit of a cliffhanger. I'll try to read again sometime this weekend. Otherwise, I hope you're enjoying this fabulous day today, and we'll talk to you later. Bye. I miss you guys.